I'd now like to welcome our panel of community voices who have intimate connections with the exhibit. So I'll be calling on you to unmute yourselves one by one, and we'll go in the order listed in the event page. So Laura, Brent, Kirsten, Carmel, then Tosh, and we'll do one question at a time. So for our first round, please introduce yourself and your role in the exhibit. And we'll start with Laura when you're ready.
Hello, yes, I'm Laura Fukumoto, and as you can see, my face is on that website quite a bit. So I'm a descendant of one of the letter writers and also an actor, and yeah, I'm in a couple videos on the website.
Great, Brent.
Hi, I'm Brent Hirose, and I am one of the letter readers reading my great-grandfather's letter.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Hi, my name's Kirsten Emiko McAllister, and I grew up with my two brothers on the territories of the Snuneymuxw people. And both on my mother's side of the family, on my father's side of the family, the Mukai Nakashima and the Macquarie McAllisters go back 4 generations as settlers on this nation. And yeah, and currently I'm a professor at Simon Fraser University, though my intellectual formation really happened right after redress with the Issei, the Nisei, and the Sensei, who I worked very closely with at that time and over the next decade and a half.
Awesome. Carmel?
Hello, everyone. My name is Carmel Tanaka, she, her pronouns. I'm calling in from the unceded territories of the Syilx Okanagan peoples, otherwise known as Vernon, BC, where my father eventually grew up post-internment. I am a Yonsei 4th generation Japanese Canadian, and I read 2 letters written by my great-grandmother Shimo Kameda for Susanne and her film crew, one of which is featured in the exhibit.
Cool, and we have Tosh. Oh, Tosh, I think you're still muted.
Here we go. Am I on? Oh, what's that?
Unmute.
We can hear you.
We can hear you, Tosh.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. I'm Tosh Kitagawa. I'm 89, going on 90. And I guess I'm one of the few survivors left from the incarceration period in 1942. And I would be happy to answer any questions that may be coming my way shortly.
Thanks, everyone. So our next question is, please tell us a little bit about what was it like participating in this project? So Laura, please start us off.
Yeah, it was so wonderful to get to know Susanne and everyone else, yeah, who participated in the project. And my story, I've lived in Vancouver for 12 years now, and I didn't know that my grandfather, my father's father, was born in Vancouver until many years after I moved here. So being able to receive this letter, and I'm lucky enough that Carolyn actually texted me, and I was one of the people that Carolyn Nakagawa texted and was like, "Are you related to this person?" And so before that protest letter, I actually didn't know the name of my great-grandfather. And that letter is a really key piece of evidence in my own family history and what I've been trying to discover since moving here. Like it gives an address to where my grandfather grew up, and I didn't know that before I read that letter. So yeah, it has been personally really informative. This project is really dear to my heart, and it's beautiful. Like what Susanne and John did is like the website, if you haven't seen it, is just absolutely breathtaking in terms of the art and the vision. But yeah, it's for me personally, I have learned a lot, and I now have names of family members that I didn't know before, and it was a way for me to open up a conversation with my father and with my family that I maybe like, yeah, it's I think a common experience that having these discussions with our family members can be emotionally difficult. And so projects like this give us a way to talk about it and learn things that otherwise we might never find out. So, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Brent?
Yeah, so I first met Carolyn when we were working on workshopping for a play that I performed in called Japanese Problem, which discussed Hastings Park and all of that history. And I had always been aware growing up of a lot of stuff that happened in the incarceration and relocation through my grandfather, Hirose, who was very much involved in the Japanese community in Manitoba, where he and my grandmother relocated to. But since I moved to Vancouver and knew that this is where my family is from, but not having any of that real connection to it, it was really an interesting and quite powerful experience to be so close to all of this. At one point, we ended up performing in Steveston, very close from where I ended up reading my great-grandfather's letter and talking to the people who had had some experience with all of that. There was one woman who she recalled as a young child moving into a fully furnished home in Steveston that somehow they had access to, and watch her sort of process the experience of where that gain that her family felt had been taken from. So yes, being able to really interface with this, and a part of my family, my great-grandfather had passed away long before I had an opportunity to meet him, and my grandfather died when I was still relatively young. So it was definitely been a huge part of the family history that was there and available, but not necessarily talked a lot about. My parents would say how, it would be something that if they had questions, they would be answered, but it was not something that came up in day-to-day experience. So to be able to see this part of my family and read the words, written by my great-grandfather, I'm sure my grandfather was helping in some way with this as well, really brought me connected to this, and feeling that innate sense of loss and the injustice that really is intergenerational and continues down. So it was a really great way to be a part of that. And I think, as a member of the Japanese Canadian diaspora, to feel that the community that I always felt lacking throughout my entire life, being part of a very small Japanese Canadian community in Manitoba, to know that this is actually a large community nationwide, and to see so many people here is also part of that community and that sense of belonging.
Thank you, Brent. Kirsten?
It was absolutely amazing to work with Susanne on this project, and I only accepted the invitation to participate because it was Susanne Tabata. She has formidable experience in film production, film direction, and it's so easy to reproduce stereotypes of Japanese, of Asians as exotic others, or as multicultural ethnics, as model minorities, and you continue to see these stereotypes circulating even in this generation's Asian Canadian artists and producers. So I trusted Susanne because of her expertise and because of her political activism. I also it was also very important for me to work with Susanne because we go back, our generation goes back, our families are have many generations in the settler nation, and the way Susanne in the introduction framed her project through the lens of today, it's not just about our community, but it's about politics now, about humanitarian crises, refugees, Indigenous territories. also what was important for me was that as a communications scholar, I know that working with media, when you are the subject of media, you're incredibly vulnerable because your image, your voice, and your words is being controlled by someone else. And Susanne also is knowledgeable about cultural politics. And sorry, I have a feeling that might be my mother calling. I'll just hang that up. I told her about this video. I'm not sure if she managed to get onto Zoom, so I hope she's here watching. But anyway, so Susanne also knows about not just the politics of bringing the past into relationship with issues that concern the present. But in addition, the politics of representation involves knowing that Japanese Canadians doing the research, doing the cultural production about our history, about our experiences today is about producing communities. And she's knowledgeable about if we let that control over our history go to people outside the community, we're giving up control over defining ourselves. And that's what redress activists fought for. When they went forward to challenge the government, they had to challenge government reports, hundreds of years of white historians and sociologists' construction of us. So she had that knowledge. But the vulnerability and her awareness also of the troubling experiences of loss and what it means to embody those words in the presence, that intergenerational aspect of the work is profound. So the care with which she took us through the process and had us reenact and re-embody earlier generations, I think really epitomizes the ethos of what it is to be a community member, and also what I learned when I worked with Issei in the 1980s. It's not about ego. It's not about the selfless sort of director or writer or organizer identity. It's about that very interesting, inclusive, intergenerational formation of the community. So it was a very valuable experience to me, and I thank Susanne for this contribution.
Thank you, Kirsten. Carmel?
So I first learned about this project through my friend and mentor, Susanne Tabata. We can't thank her enough or praise her enough. And that was actually before I even knew that my great-grandmother, Shimo Kometa, was in fact a protest letter writer. And it was either Susanne, Carolyn, or Lisa who made the connection that I'm actually a descendant of the Port Essington Kometa family. And that eventually led to reaching out to a friend of mine through the Jewish community, of which I'm also a member of, Jordan Stanger Ross, who's the lead on the Landscapes of Injustice team in Victoria, which led to getting connected with Caitlin, who might also be on the call today, to find out more about my family. So for me, it was quite an unpacking of information that I didn't have access to prior to. I unfortunately grew up not connected to the Japanese Canadian community. And my Bachan and my Jichan either passed away just before I was born or when I was a little wee one. And my great grandmother died in the 60s. So there really hasn't been any overlap or a chance for me to learn more. And I know better than to ask the questions of my parents and generation, because that brings up a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. And so I've been having to figure out the pieces and the puzzles of my family's history through other community members. And I'm very thankful to everyone who has helped me. And the last thing I will say is the fact that it's my great grandmother, a woman, who not only wrote one, but 2 protest letters. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmel. And Tosh?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Regarding these protest letters, I didn't write one, but I was listening to Susanne, and one of the things that she said was of interest was that our story is not familiar to very many people. And what Mary and I do is that we speak at schools, both at the primary level and the senior secondary. And we start off with me explaining the history of colonialism in British Columbia and all the racist laws that were instituted from Confederation that affected all minority peoples. And then when I finish, Mary tells her story, and her story is very compelling in as much that her family really experienced the whole gamut. In other words, her father was taken very early and sent off to the road camps. And then the rest of the family were sent to Hastings Park. And from there, they went to Greenwood and visited, not visited, were incarcerated at practically all the incarceration camps in the interior, and actually went 2 trips to the beet fields in Alberta. So this is the way Mary and I are involved. And also when I had the convocation in 2012 for the 76 students, one of the byproducts was ACAM, which was Asian Canadian and Asian migration. And it's a course at UBC that's open to all university kids. But I feel that our story has to be incorporated into the curriculum of both the junior and senior secondary schools. And I think that there should be more effort placed in this to get our story as part of the curriculum. Thank you.